Hey guys, the water department just called. They're concerned because my water consumption has gone up by 75,000 gallons this week. Is there anything I should know?
No. There's no whales in the basement, so it can't be that.
Smooth. Real smooth.
Thanks.
I'm sorry. Did he say whales in the basement?
Dad, I'm just thinking of the future of our planet. What if an alien probe comes to try to talk to whales and there aren't any left?
You don't actually expect me to believe that you filled the basement with water and that there are whales down there. That's impossible.
Not for Amazon. Free Prime shipping.
Lady Kristen!
Now we're gonna hear some colorful metaphors.
Yep.
Continuing our voyages with the Starship Enterprise, we recently watched Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home, which is a film from 1986. Now to recap, thus far, you enjoyed Star Trek the Motion Picture.
Yes.
You really liked Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. And you loved Star Trek III: The Search for Spock.
Which is my favorite.
Okay, Star Trek IV.
I think that this one ties with Star Trek 3. I think that this would probably be one of my favorites. And that's because it's different. I think they're a little bit more funny in this one.
Yeah, they definitely do play up the humor. And sitting there watching it with you for as many times as I've seen this film, for the first time it occurred to me that the film series paralleled the television series in some ways because they were telling a different kind of story in each episode, just like in each film. So while the motion picture was kind of a deep philosophical story, and they had a lot of those in Star Trek, The Wrath of Khan was more of an adventure story, sort of like Arena or Balance of Terror. And Star Trek 3 had the Vulcan undercurrent going through it, so it was like a muck time where it kind of delved into the Vulcan culture. And then this one was very much like The Trouble with Tribbles in some ways because it had that comedic element. And the other thing I noticed was two of the most popular episodes of the television show were City on the Edge of Forever, which was a time travel episode, and The Trouble with Tribbles, which was a comedy episode. And this film kind of combined those two elements and did it very well. And so I think that's one of the reasons why maybe it is so appealing in that way.
I like the main mission here, searching for whales.
And you're very into the earth and environment and animals, so that makes sense.
And I like how they incorporate it to the real mission. They're not just off.
Right. They need these whales because, Kirk and the crew are basically they've been on Vulcan all this time, and they're deciding what to do. If they go back to Earth, they know they're going to face charges because they stole the Enterprise and disobeyed Starfleet orders, and of course the Enterprise was destroyed too. But they do decide to go back to Earth, and they take the stolen Klingon bird of prey and they head back to Earth. And unbeknownst to them, Earth is being ravaged by a probe from another planet, and that probe is trying to communicate with humpback whales, which it had been communicating with for many, many years through history, and all of a sudden the sound of the whales went silent because the whales had gone extinct. So this probe has gone to Earth to investigate why. And Kirk and Spock and Uhura figure out that the probe is trying to talk to the whales, and there are no whales on Earth to talk to.
Right.
So they come up with this idea of going back in time to 1986, basically, and bringing the whales forward in time so they can communicate with the probe.
And I like that, and I like how there was one part that was pretty funny where they get to San Francisco, and Captain Kirk and Spock are going off to the shop.
They're going to the antique store, right?
Yes.
Because Kirk is going to trade his glasses to get money because they need money.
Right. And they're all dressed in their uniforms, and I think it's pretty cool.
Right, they're all very awkward on the sidewalk, and they're all standing there. And he even turns around and he says, "Break up, look natural. You look like a cadet review," and they still don't know what to do. And it is a lot of good humor is played up there. And your point also is made because that crew, that core group of the original cast, really all get a moment to shine in this film, even more so than anything before that. This really does focus on the core group, even more so even than Search for Spock, because we have Spock back in the fold now, so he's a part of it. I think that's a good point of, it's that fish out of water story, and that's what brings the humor into it.
I also liked when the girl, the biologist,
Jillian.
Yes. I think that she had some good parts, but I thought she was a little bit annoying in some parts.
She's a very different character in a Star Trek film than we're used to, and a very different leading lady, let's say, in a Star Trek film. And I did think it was funny, though, because, she gets brought forward in time, of course.
Yes.
And at the end, I think Captain Kirk thinks that they're in a relationship, and she's basically like, "Oh, no, I got your number. I'll see you sometime around the galaxy," and she heads off. So the roles, the tables get turned on Captain Kirk somewhat, because he's usually the one that heads off to space with the romances. So I thought that was kind of funny.
I think my three favorite characters would probably be Captain Kirk, Spock, and actually Scotty in this one.
Yeah, Captain Kirk, again, is strong. I liked, he's my favorite character, certainly. I know you're a Mr. Spock fan. And Mr. Spock gets a lot to play here because he's got the humor of being a Vulcan and being out of time, but also he's faced with all these memories that he's trying to deal with because he's been brought back to life.
Right.
So he's trying to process everything that's happened to him and all these memories that are, in a sense, new for him.
Right.
And, he's trying to navigate this time period, and he's not really, his game is not his best game, so that makes for a lot of humor. And Scotty, you're right, Scotty's got a great part in here. And when he goes to that factory, because he needs plexiglass, and very thick plexiglass, to make the tank for the whales, and they have no money. So in exchange, he offers the head of the manufacturing plant the formula for transparent aluminum.
Yes.
Which I don't even know if anybody had even given that a thought. If that was something on some drawing board of some scientist, like, I wonder if we could create transparent aluminum. But sitting in the theater in 1986, the average theater goer, we had no clue transparent aluminum could even be a thing. And now, as you and I sit here, when you saw that film, it's become a reality. They've actually made that. And that's another one of those things that's been, because of Star Trek and because of people who watch Star Trek through the years, were inspired by the technology of Star Trek to actually create these inventions. Like the flip phone is really a direct descendant of the communicator. And those pads that we sign with our fingers or with stylus pens came from Star Trek, and now transparent aluminum. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that's a neat thing that Scotty got to do in there, and it actually became a reality.
What do you think your favorite characters would be?
In this film, I really like Captain Kirk. Always. I thought Mr. Chekhov had a good part in here. He had a lot of humorous parts. He gets to do a lot of fun things. And I think I always tend to forget to mention Dr. McCoy because he's so good at what he does. He brings so much humor, and he grounds everything. He's always kind of the way we might see this, through his eyes in a lot of ways, because he's the one that's the most down to earth and and he's very funny, and he was great in the last film as well. I think he's probably one of my favorites.
Yes, and I do like him, don't get me wrong, but I mean, if I had to choose some other people, I would probably choose the three that I said. Right.
I think Dr. McCoy has he always has great banter, whether it's between him and Captain Kirk or him and Mr. Spock.
Yes.
And it really make those three really, tie the thing together. But the supporting characters are great too. So, what else?
I don't think anything.
So this is you have two favorites now, Star Trek 3 and Star Trek 4.
Yes.
All right, one last thing. So this is basically the third act of a 3-act play. You know, Star Trek 2 starts it off, that's Act 1, and then we get to Star Trek 3, which is the middle portion of the story. And then this is the last, you know, this is the conclusion to the story. How do you think these three films fit together? Does this one fit with the other two for you?
Yes, certainly. I mean, I know it's a little bit different, but they're on a main mission, and it's for a purpose. It's not just for nothing.
I agree. Somehow they make this work. Now, if I told you that I was writing a story and the first 2 sections of that story, Act 1 and Act 2, were going to be serious approaches to the story, and it was going to be science fiction, and in the third act, we were going to get funny. We were going to go for comedy somewhat. You wouldn't think that would work, and yet they are able to make it work here, and it works well, and it works very well. The only thing I think doesn't fit here would be the soundtrack music. James Horner scored Star Trek 2 and 3, and the music here is different. And I think they were probably going for something lighter and more upbeat because it is a different type of, there's a different tone certainly to the film, so they were going for a different musical tone. But I think it should have been made perhaps to work a little more with the other 2 films. I'll mention that also in the supporting cast of this is the last time we see Mark Lenard as Sarek, Spock's father, with the original cast. He makes guest appearances on Star Trek The Next Generation, but as far as being with the original cast, this is the last time we see him. And Jane Wyatt plays Amanda, Spock's mother, and she actually she played that role in the television series, so she comes back and plays it here. And we see Admiral Cartwright for the first time, I believe, here, and he'll come back in Star Trek 6. And it's the last time we see Lieutenant Saavik. So there's a bunch of other supporting characters that we do see here, and they all have nice little moments. Saavik probably has the smallest of those, but certainly Sarek has a nice role here, and Spock's mother has an important role, I believe, too. All right, well, last take, print it or cut it?
Print it.
Definitely, going to print it here too. Now we have a dilemma, really quickly. Star Trek V is the next film in the series. Now, Star Trek V was directed by William Shatner, and I'm not going to criticize the direction of that film at all. I'm going to tell you that the film experienced production problems because the studio got involved in it and they cut the budget and changed the script and different things happened. And whenever that happens to a film, the film suffers. The story's going to suffer. So this is considered probably the weakest of the films. And then Star Trek 6 is a different kind of film, maybe that fits a little better with the other ones. But I do think we should watch Star Trek 5 anyway, because I think it's important that, there are some moments in it that are good moments. I think it was just, there was too much interference from outside forces that maybe undermined the film. Are you into watching it?
Yes.
All right, then we'll be back with Star Trek 5. So the adventure continues.